Hi, I'm Shira Dicker, and I'm sitting here with David Birnbaum, with whom I began an interesting journey, I would say, a couple of months ago. I am a writer. I am a blogger. I write fiction. I'm a graduate of Columbia University Graduate School of Journalism. I'm also a publicist, and I work on projects at the nexus of culture and religion. And to say that I'm intrigued by David Birnbaum and his philosophy is really an understatement. I'm intrigued, I'm challenged, I want to get to understand it a little bit more. And before we even begin, I just want to point out, in case you didn't notice, I came with the volume that really intrigues me the most.
Touches your soul, right?
And I have been, every page has been a surprise. There is philosophy and poetry, and there's something that feels to me almost like diary writing, like the scribblings of the soul. And so what I would like to do is begin by asking David to give an introduction to his philosophy, to the quest for potential. And I'll also just start by saying one of the reasons I'm here is because even before I began to unpack and get to understand David's philosophy, something zapped me with the power of revelation and truth. And I believe that there are things that we know on a visceral and immediate intuitive level before we even understand on an intellectual level.
Correct.
So having that as an introduction, I would like, David, for you to begin to explain the overarching philosophy behind this series.
So that's a big question, and I answer it sort of in 3 different volumes. Summa 1, Summa 2, and Summa 3. Summa 1 is religious man, Summa 2 is a spiritual man, and Summa 3 secular man. However, when I was a youngster, I grew up in a modern Orthodox home, modern Orthodox Jewish home, and went to modern Orthodox Jewish day school. And neither in my home, and my parents are high-level people, or in Yeshiva Forest Hills, which was a top day school, and in that school, neither in the Hebrew department nor in the science labs were they able to answer any of the key questions. Nobody could answer any of the key questions. Where did the origin, where did the universe come from? What drives the universe? Where is it heading? And then in particular in the Hebrew department, if there is a God, then why is there gross evil? If there is a God, what are the origins of God? And so I was born in 1950. The Big Bang Theory emerged in the 30s and 40s. And so where did the Big Bang come from? What originated the Big Bang? I happen to be an astronomy buff, my little hobby, and I had an ongoing, almost real-time feel for the developments in the field. And around the 6th grade, we had an extraordinary teacher, Mrs. Stein, and she dropped 2 points which intrigued my little brain. Mrs. Stein was one of those great teachers which you all want to have once in our lifetime. And Dov Revel, anybody who graduated Dov Revel Hatter will tell you to this day, 40, 50 years later, of her extraordinary impact on us. And she let drop 2 things over the course of the year. One was whoever could deal with some of these questions would shake the world. And she also told some of us to think big. So we sort of took her up on it. And I decided to put it on my to-do list. But I intuited a few things. That it was probably one concept lanced all these issues, one by the other. And number 2, it was probably hiding in plain sight. Why did I say that? Because any concept powerful enough to have ignited the cosmic order, to have breathed life into life, was probably still around us. We just weren't quite seeing it. And my job was sort of to absorb as many stimuli as I could and see if my mind could connect the dots. And around, so let's say this journey began circa when I was age 10. And roughly when I was age 32, I know exactly, January 1982, I had that little eureka moment, and I realized one concept, infinite potential, might lance all these issues simultaneously. And I subsequently, over the decades, wrote these 3 volumes.
Okay.
Is that a fair answer?
That's a fair answer. So let me take a step back, because
Right.
this is all very interesting.
Right.
So I'll reveal the following. So we are 10 years apart. I don't know exactly when your birthday is, but I was born in 1960.
Okay.
I'm going to guess your upbringing was modern Orthodox,
Right,
something
right,
like that. Mine was conservative.
Right.
At the nexus, though, of Orthodox practice, but conservative theology.
Right. Right.
And very interestingly, issues having to do, the metaphysical issues,
Right.
were raised and were
Right.
discussed. So
Right.
the first thing I want to ask you, and I may know the answer, but I want to hear you speak a little bit more about this,
Right.
is why do you think, because I've heard this from other people,
Right.
married to somebody
Right.
from this kind of background,
Right.
why do you think there may have been an unwillingness or discomfort to raise issues of the metaphysical within contemporary Orthodox?
Then or now?
Then.
Well, in general, people don't like to raise issues where they don't have an answer.
Mhm.
I think people knew they had no answer. There was no answer on the table. So I know I was afraid to frontally ask my father or my mother the question because I knew they had no answer.
Yeah.
And I would really harass the youth directors in my synagogue. I would beat them up, one after the other,
Yeah.
because I didn't have to hold my punches. And I would gently broach it with the rabbinics and teachers. But I was more proactive with youth directors, where I could be more no holds barred without breaking their hearts.
So then I want to know, number one, what their reactions were, but also do you think, because I remember a point in time before mystical matters, Kabbalah, was
Right.
not yet on the radar screen.
Right.
It was really not where it is now.
Right.
So the question is, do you think I want to know what your youth director said, what their reaction was, and then I want you to maybe speak about the change in zeitgeist, what was just not currently available, I think, to people.
Well, I don't think there was answers were available then or now, unless you get involved, and integrate the Summa philosophy. I just don't believe they exist. And in the intro to Summa 1, this is Summa 1. Religious Man. It was originally titled God and Evil. And I do a survey of the responses over the centuries to the problem of evil. And I elucidate, the weaknesses in them. And that section is considered a pretty comprehensive section by many people. So you can't answer if you don't have the answer. Now, you want to have a follow-up question to that? You want a follow-up question to that?
Well, I want to know because
Right.
it's my perception.
Right.
It's my perception that things have changed in the intervening years. Things have that. For instance, I just came back from Limud, where
Right.
you have quite a lot of conversation about ultimate issues, metaphysical issues, underneath an Orthodox rubric.
Yeah, right. Okay, so you have more conversation.
Mhm.
Thank God.
Yeah.
And of course, Limud is an extraordinary group, as we know. And Judaism in general is a quest for truth.
Mhm.
Over the centuries, Jews have always sought truth. My view of the chessboard is that I've given you a solution on a silver platter. Why don't you take a taste? And I'm aware that in Jewish circles, people like the solution to come from a very profoundly spiritual entity, Allah Heschel, etc. And his words are treated, with reverence, etc. And of course, I respect the Heschel types. But people should remember, anyone who has a stature of Heschel is basically playing by the rules. To have gotten to that stature. But anyone who plays by the rules is not going to solve these issues. That's the conundrum. So I don't play by the rules, although I'm respectful of the rules, but I'm clear that I don't play by the rules, and therefore I'm able to deal with the issues frontally. First, you have to be able to frankly state a problem in general in life. You have to accept the problem before you can get to a solution. If you don't accept there's a problem, you can't get to a solution in general, whether it's interpersonal, military, financial. So, now, I'm not saying that I solve all the issues of religion. I think religion is an option, just to be clear. I mean, I walk the walk. I attend modern Orthodox and conservative Orthodox synagogues, and my kids were brought up modern Orthodox and remain modern Orthodox. So I walk the walk, but intellectually and in my writings, I present religion as a viable option, legitimate, valid option. Historically, most people who write metaphysics take one of the other viewpoints. Either religion is great or religion is terrible. It's rare that someone says it works, but it's optional. That's my position, which is sort of a dangerous position because you don't have a built-in constituency to give you added firepower.
Okay, so I want to scroll back now. So let's get back to the little David with the youth directors. You're challenging them. You're driving them crazy.
Exactly.
This kid, what's he doing? He has these questions, but maybe some of them are engaging, and maybe I'm going to guess some of them actually thought, "Wow, what a really unusual, bright little kid."
Well, whatever. Yeah.
You nurtured this theory. You've developed it. Tell me about the first time that when you began to, I have to use the word codify it, right? When you began to think to organize it into, it was kicking around in your mind, okay?
Okay, so originally I focused on theodicy, which is classic question. If there is a God who's all-powerful and all-merciful, why is it gross evil? This is a classic question, and it's used as one of the major attacks on religion. How can you believe in God if you have this gaping problem? There's a twin problem, which is called theogony, which is where did this, so to speak, eternal God come from? Yes, we understand you say God is eternal, very nice, but where does eternal God come from? It's sort of the twin question to it. One could easily conjecture the answer to one might be the answer to the other. But my main focus was theodicy, hoping. I felt that if I had a potential solution, it should solve both. If it solved both, then I could actually invest in the theory. So, and I was looking for a concept which was sort of in plain sight, but but some concept I could turbocharge. I mean, there's no concept in plain sight which is igniting cosmos. That's unrealistic. But maybe there was a gentle concept floating around in our daily lives which, if it was turbocharged or pivoted, could conceivably, if taking a step back, have mega power to it. So finally, I was actually on the beach in Barbados with my wife at the time, Sharon, and I was walking along the beach myself, and it sort of hit me. Okay, potential would potentially solve both these problems. How is that? If potential is at the core of the universe, at the core of the divine might have to withdraw to allow man his own potential. Of course, I could spend in a book, but that's the guts of it.
Right.
And if potential is at the core of the universe, one can make a case that potential is eternal. If potential is eternal, and potential is at the core of divine, then we have the 1-2 step. The divine is eternal because the core of divine is potential.
Okay.
And since potential is eternal, the divine is eternal. And since the core of divine is potential, the divine cannot interfere too much with potential because it would be like cosmic suicide. Therefore, the divine has to give us space and autonomy and privacy because the potential is the core of the universe. You can play with these terms and phrases more, but you got the basic drift. I realized there was room to maneuver to play with these concepts. So I walk back to my wife and I say, Sharon, I think I just cracked the cosmic code, and I got the look,
Yeah. Great.
But anyway, so and then I went back to New York to check the encyclopedias to see if anyone had used the word potential prior.
Uh-huh.
And that was a big moment for me. We didn't have Google then to check Google.
Okay.
I went to about 5 or 8 big libraries and got out the big encyclopedias, went through the table of contents and the indexes, and nobody had used it. And so I figured I had a basis for investigation. And I worked on it for about 6 months, an outline. And my big moment was I called in Larry Schiffman, who subsequently became very famous in Jewish history, to look at the 3-page outline. So it was a big moment. I said, "What do you think?" So he said he read it quickly. I don't think he even took his coat off. And he said, "It's original, it's powerful, it's neo-Kabbalistic. I'm gonna help you get it published."
Yeah.
And so about 6 years later, it was published. And then from there. But you do need a Larry Schiffman entering your life, to make things happen.
Sure.
And he's been on board over the decades, actually.
So, speaking of neo-Kabbalistic, so could you comment on the Kabbalistic-like idea of God withdrawing oneself in Tzimtzum, right?
Okay, so let me preface by saying I'm wary of Kabbalah in general. I'm not jumping into the deep end of the Kabbalah pool.
Yeah.
I'm very wary of the centerpiece Kabbalistic book, the Zohar. I'm extremely wary of it. I would not quote from that book.
Okay.
That being said, there's a substream of Kabbalah called Luriana Kabbalah, and which has its own special feel to it. And now, this of course is a very big question, but I deal with the beginning of Kabbalah has a beginning, a middle, and an end to it. And so does my theory. Can I expand a little bit about it?
Please. Yeah.
The beginning of Kabbalah is a concept of Ein Sof, the no end. And remember, my beginning concept is infinite potential. So you can see there's sort of a one-to-one correspondence, and one can make a case for one-to-one correspondence between infinite potential and Ein Sof, no end. Meaning Kabbalah does not start where classic Jewish philosophy starts, with the classic God of creation, parting the Red Sea. Kabbalah starts much earlier with a no-end concept, sort of a primordial divine. It's very important. It's not mainstream Jewish thought, but it's sort of legitimate Jewish. It's a legitimate thought in the Jewish Masorah. And at the end point of Kabbalah, and not just Luriana Kabbalah, is Tikkun Olam, repair or perfect the world, depending on or repair and perfect the world. And remember, the end point of my little metaphysics is what I call extraordinariation, which is the cosmic quest for spiritual, aesthetic, and across-the-board perfection. And one can make a case again that the two have a one-to-one correspondence. And in the middle of Kabbalah, you have the concept of Tzimtzum, which is withdrawal of divine. In my little metaphysics, I have withdrawal of divine consciousness. Again, if there is a divine. So I don't using Kabbalah to prove my thesis. I'm using it to tether my thesis from Jewish Masorah. And one does not have to tether metaphysics, but the Jews like it, and most people like it. Is that a fair answer?
It's a fair answer. So let me bring it to the here and now.
Right.
I know my answer, but I think that this is important.
Right.
So here we're talking about why, to use a title, why bad things happen to good people, right? Which really begs the question of God. We have daily acts of horrific evil happening in the world.
For sure.
Okay? And ultimately, a philosophy on life it exists in the here and now. It exists in what's happening, what's
Correct.
filling the headlines.
Right.
Is it? I know my take. If I see the latest horrible headline from whatever ISIS is
Right.
doing, or Boko Haram, or you name the atrocity,
Right.
I know my response, and frankly, it has nothing to do with God. But I'm curious where evil acts perpetrated by humankind fit into your philosophical scheme.
Okay, so of course, again, this is why I started the series in the first place. And it's one of these issues where you have to give it your best shot. You can't say you have total wisdom, you know, because you might have the wisdom until the evil hits you, and then all of a sudden it all breaks
Right.
down very quickly. But one would hope that you can even withstand that, God forbid. Okay, so the question is, so how does infinite potential ignite a cosmic order? Very nice, you have infinite potential. How does it ignite the cosmos? Right? So here again, I tether it to a concept from the span of the history of ideas, including Masorah, but not exclusive to Masorah. And I of course, as I often do, I morph ancient concepts a little bit. I posit that, you know, in Einsteinian theory, to get us to an atomic bomb, it's split the atom, right? You split an atom, and you have an atomic bomb, one tiny atom. And my theory is, because I write metaphysics, because I wasn't there at creation, although my late mother might think I was.
Okay.
I was not there.
Yeah.
Is that infinite potential split zero. Whatever zero is, it split it, and it split into positive and negatives, male and female. And there was no possibility just to split zero into positives. That ideally, infinite potential would have just wanted to have positives in the universe. But in order for there to be creation itself, that unfortunately had to be negative. And it frankly works for me. When I witness these terrible things, it works for me. It works for me. Although I'm saying the universe itself, the cosmic order, weeps along with us. Weeps that it had to be the residue of serious evil. And I have a medrash which I actually gave at Ohev Tzedek on Yom HaShoah night, directly relating to your question. So that's what I'm going to say quickly. I have it in the book. Is that originally, it's an author's medrash. Not that I'm worthy to a medrash, but authors sometimes have a little liberty. I created a medrash that the God of Israel called his phalanx of 100 angels. Should we create the universe? Because they're going to be so evil and suffering. And 99 of the angels said no. And only one said yes for the creation of life. And on that basis, the universe was created. That the possibility of life trumps the reality of evil. Because without the possibility of evil, there could not have been anything. And on some level, it was not just a decision back then. On some level, I positively all made the decision, all of us, somehow cumulatively, somehow retroactively, that cumulatively we decided we're going to go with it, in spite of the strain of evil.
Okay, no,
Right.
that's